Noah Benson, 42, banker in Lincoln, Nebraska. Quiet, predictable, invisible. His younger brother Austin, 39, tech entrepreneur. Loud, flashy, everyone's favorite. Their entire childhood. Austin got the bigger slice of cake. The better toys. Their parents' attention. Noah learned early to step aside, to not make waves. His wife Jess hated this about him. You let everyone walk over you, she'd say. Disappointment dripping from every word. Noah's parents, Cooper and Clara Benson, were good people. Hard-working. They built a comfortable life from nothing, but they rarely talked about family history. Noah remembered vague mentions of grandfather Logan living somewhere out west, but his parents always changed the subject. Once, when Noah was 12, he asked his father about their family roots. Cooper's expression had darkened. Some things are better left in the past, son. Then came the phone call. March 15th. Highway accident. Semi-truck lost control on Interstate 80. Both parents killed instantly. Noah collapsed at his desk. His coworkers didn't know what to do with his grief. At the hospital, Austin cried for the cameras, but his eyes stayed dry, calculating. The funeral was a blur of condolences and casseroles. Noah barely spoke. Austin networked, shaking hands, making connections even at their parents' burial. 3 days after they laid Cooper and Clara Benson to rest, the family lawyer called them in for the will reading. Austin arrived in a custom suit, confident smile plastered on his face. "Don't worry, brother," he said, clapping Noah's shoulder. "I'm sure they split everything fairly." Noah nodded, too numb to respond, but fairness was about to become a distant memory. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and expensive cologne. Miss Patricia Greenfield sat behind a massive desk, expression blank as stone. She opened the will with practiced efficiency. To Austin Benson, the family home at 4215 Lawrence Avenue, Lincoln, Nebraska. Current market value, $1.2 million. All vehicles. Investment portfolio valued at $340,000. Austin's grin spread slowly across his face. To Noah Benson. The property located at 2847 Mountain Ridge Road, Stillwater County, Montana. All contents of said property included. Silence. Austin fought back laughter. Contents? Like what? Raccoons? Noah sat frozen. Montana? He'd never even been there. Didn't know his parents owned property there. Is there a value estimate? Noah asked quietly. Miss Greenfield shook her head. The property hasn't been appraised in over 30 years. Your grandfather Logan lived there until his death in 1992. Your father never returned after that. Austin stood, already making plans. Well, this works out perfectly then. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Noah drove home in silence. Jess, staring out the passenger window, jaw clenched. The moment they walked through the door, she exploded. Are you kidding me? You're just going to accept this? It was their will, Jess. Your will. Your choice to be weak. Austin gets $1 million estate, and you get some falling apart shack in the middle of nowhere. I don't even know what's there. That's the point, Noah. You never fight. You never stand up. Not to Austin, not to your parents, not to anyone. She threw a glass against the wall. It shattered. Your parents clearly didn't respect you. And you know what? I'm starting to understand why. Noah tried to speak, but nothing came out. Get out, Jess said coldly. Go to your ruin in Montana. Don't come back until you prove you're worth something. The next morning, Noah packed a duffel bag. Jess was on the phone with her mother, loudly complaining about her pathetic husband who inherited garbage while his brother got everything. Noah paused at the kitchen counter. He looked at his wedding ring, the gold band they'd chosen together 15 years ago. He slid it off and set it beside the coffee maker. He drove toward Montana, not knowing if he'd ever come back. 13 hours of highway, gas station coffee, country songs about heartbreak. Noah's mind kept replaying every moment he was overlooked. Every time he stepped aside for Austin. Every disappointed look from Jess. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was weak. Stillwater County, Montana. Population 2,800. 1 main street. Mountains in every direction. GPS led him down a gravel road that hadn't been maintained in decades. Trees pressed in from both sides. The road became little more than 2 dirt tracks through overgrown grass. Then he saw it. The house was worse than he imagined. Sagging porch, shattered windows, roof with visible holes, weeds taller than him, paint peeling in long, dead strips. One corner of the structure had partially collapsed. Noah sat in his car for 20 minutes, staring. This was his inheritance, his entire share of his parents' estate. An old rancher approached, weathered face under a stained hat. "You, Cooper's boy?" Noah nodded, stepping out of his car. "Heard he passed. Sorry for your loss. Name's Dale. I own the property down the road." He gestured vaguely east. "Nobody's been in that house since your grandfather died. That was back in '92. 32 years of neglect does this. Did you know my grandfather? Logan?" Dale scratched his jaw. "Some. Kept to himself mostly. Lived alone out here for decades. Your daddy came once after Logan passed. Looked around, locked it up, and never came back. Always wondered why he just left it to rot." Noah forced the front door open. The hinges screamed in protest. Inside, animal droppings everywhere. Rotted furniture. Collapsed ceiling in the back room. Kitchen with a 1,972nd stove. Cabinets hanging off the walls. One bedroom with just a rusted bed frame. Newspaper from 1991 still on a table, yellowed and brittle. The smell was overwhelming. Decay, abandonment, failure. Noah sat on the filthy floor, back against the wall. He pulled out his phone. 1 bar of signal, barely enough to load messages he'd received before losing service earlier. "Jess, hope you're enjoying your dump. Austin. Let me know when you're ready to sell that land. I'll give you $50K. Being generous here. $50,000. For his entire inheritance." Noah almost called him back, almost accepted. But something stopped him. Maybe pride. Maybe exhaustion. Maybe just curiosity. Why would his parents leave him this place specifically? As twilight fell, Noah stood and walked the hallway again. He counted his steps. Something felt wrong about the dimensions. The house had 4 visible rooms. But from outside, there should be space for more. He pressed his hand against the oak-paneled wall in the hallway. "What are you hiding?" he whispered. Day 3. Late March cold bit through Noah's jacket. He'd cleared most of the debris, patched one window with cardboard and duct tape. Still slept in his car because the house felt too unstable. But also because something about it unsettled him. Like it was waiting. That wall haunted him. He measured it with his footsteps, counted ceiling tiles, checked the exterior dimensions. The math didn't work. There was at least 8 feet of space unaccounted for behind that oak-paneled section. He examined the panels more carefully. They were different from the rest. Darker, older, hand-carved with unusual precision. Then he saw it. A symbol carved into the wood. A circle intersecting 3 lines. The carving was worn smooth, as if someone had touched it thousands of times. Noah traced it with his finger, and something clicked. The panel swung inward on hidden hinges. Noah's breath caught. A hidden room, maybe 8 × 10 feet. No windows, preserved perfectly by the sealed environment. Shelves lined the walls, holding objects Noah had never seen outside of museums. Ancient pottery, with intricate black and red geometric patterns. A ceremonial drum with painted buffalo hide. The artwork still vibrant. An eagle feather headdress, pristine white and brown feathers with beadwork so detailed it looked impossible. Arrowheads displayed in a wooden case. Folded blankets with traditional designs in red, black, yellow, and white. Leather pouches, a bow, stone tools. Beaded moccasins. and on a small table in the center, a leather journal. Noah's hand shook as he picked it up. The cover was stamped, Logan Sullivan. Sullivan, not Benson. Noah opened the first page. The ink had faded, but the words were clear. The 22nd of March, 1992. To whoever finds this, if you carry our blood, these belong to you. Protect them. Never let them belong to strangers. I am dying, and my son refuses to accept this responsibility. Perhaps my grandson, or his children, will understand what I could not make Cooper see. Noah flipped through the pages, heart pounding. Logan wrote about their family's Lakota heritage, about Noah's great-grandfather, Wyatt Sullivan, a man who fought to protect tribal traditions during the early 1900s when the government was actively trying to erase native cultures. The government tried to destroy us. They took our children to boarding schools where they cut their hair, banned our language, beat them for practicing our ways. They forced us onto reservations and took our lands. My father, Wyatt, saved what he could. He hid these artifacts so they wouldn't be destroyed or stolen by collectors. Before he died in 1943, he made me promise to keep them safe. Logan explained how he built this house specifically to protect these items, how he created the hidden room, how his son Cooper had been ashamed of their heritage. Cooper wanted to blend in. He changed our name from Sullivan to Benson. He moved to Nebraska, married a white woman, raised his children as if we had no history. I don't blame him. He lived through times when being Native meant discrimination, poverty, violence. He wanted safety for his family. But, in seeking safety, he lost something precious. Logan's final entry was dated 3 days before his death. I know Cooper will never return here, but I pray that someday, someone in our bloodline will be ready. Someone will understand what these represent. If you're reading this, that someone is you. Don't fail our ancestors. Don't let their sacrifices be forgotten. Noah closed the journal. Tears streamed down his face. He wasn't the forgotten son. He was the chosen one. Noah spent the next 4 days in that room, reading every page of Logan's journal multiple times, touching the artifacts with reverence, trying to understand the weight of what he'd inherited. On day 7, he drove into town, where his phone finally got signal. He had 43 missed calls and texts. He ignored most of them, but he called his college friend James, an archaeologist at the University of Montana. Noah, man, I haven't heard from you in what, 5 years? What's going on? James, I need you to look at something. Can you come to Stillwater County? When? Tomorrow? Something in Noah's voice made James agree without asking more questions. He arrived the next afternoon in a dusty SUV, professor glasses and cargo pants, looking exactly like he had in college. Noah led him to the hidden room. James stopped in the doorway. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He moved slowly, carefully, examining each item. He pulled out white gloves from his bag, a magnifying glass, a notebook. He photographed everything from multiple angles. He didn't speak for 30 minutes. Finally, Noah, do you have any idea what you're sitting on? My grandfather's collection. These artifacts are pre-1900s. Some of them might date back to the 1,850 seconds or earlier. This headdress alone. James knelt before it, his voice trembling. This is ceremonial grade. The craftsmanship is museum quality. And this drum, the hide painting, is completely intact. Do you understand how rare that is? Noah felt something twist in his stomach. What are they worth? James looked at him seriously. Conservatively, if you found the right buyers, the entire collection could fetch anywhere from $2 to $4 million. Maybe more at auction. The number hit Noah like a freight train. $4 million. He could buy the Lincoln estate from Austin twice over, pay off every debt Jess had, live comfortably for the rest of his life, prove to everyone he wasn't a failure. But Noah, James continued, standing and facing him directly, these aren't just valuable objects. They're cultural heritage. Lakota history. If you sell them, they'll end up behind glass in some private collection or museum storage. They'll be cataloged, studied, and completely removed from their cultural meaning and context. Noah thought about Logan's words. Never let them belong to strangers. I need time to think, Noah said. James nodded. I understand. But Noah, word is going to get out. I have to report this discovery to my department. It's protocol for finds of this significance. Once that happens, you'll have collectors, museums, maybe even federal agencies knocking on your door. These artifacts might fall under NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. What does that mean? It means they might not legally be yours to sell. They might belong to the tribe. After James left, Noah sat on the porch, staring at the mountains. $4 million versus doing what was right. His phone buzzed. Austin, heard your archaeologist buddy visited. Find something interesting? We should talk business, brother. Noah's jaw clenched. James had only left 2 hours ago. How did Austin already know? Then Noah remembered small town. Dale probably saw James's university vehicle. Word travels fast in a place this size. He texted back, not for sale. Austin, everything's for sale, Noah. I'm driving up this weekend. We'll figure this out. Noah turned off his phone. He wasn't ready for this fight yet, but it was coming. That night, Noah couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the money, what it could mean, the life he could rebuild. Jess would take him back. Austin would finally respect him. He could prove to everyone he wasn't a failure. $4 million. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw Logan's handwriting. Protect them. Never let them belong to strangers. At dawn, Noah went back into the hidden room. He sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by his ancestors' legacy. He opened the journal again, reading deeper into the later entries. Logan wrote about growing up Lakota in the 1,920 seconds and 30 seconds. How his father Wyatt taught him to hunt, to track, to read the land. How they performed ceremonies under open skies, always watching for government agents who would arrest them for practicing their religion. Then the forced assimilation began in earnest. The government threatened to take Logan to a boarding school institutions designed to kill the Indian, save the man. Children were beaten for speaking their language, punished for any display of native culture, stripped of their identities. Wyatt Sullivan refused to let them take his son. They lived on the run for 3 years, hiding in the mountains, moving from place to place, relying on other Lakota families who risked everything to help them. My father told me, they can take our land, our freedom, even our lives, but they cannot take who we are. Not if we remember. Not if we protect what matters. These objects aren't just things, Logan. They're our people's memory. Without them, we disappear. When Wyatt died in 1943, Logan was 28 years old. He inherited these artifacts, the last physical connection to their people's history that hadn't been confiscated or destroyed. He bought this land with money he'd saved working ranches, built this house with his own hands, created the hidden room, lived alone for nearly 50 years, protecting everything. I never married. I never had wealth. I never traveled or built a legacy of my own. But I had purpose. I kept our ancestors alive. I preserved what my father died protecting. Someday, someone will find this. Someday, someone will understand that some things are worth more than money, more than comfort, more than fitting in. Noah closed the journal, tears streaming down his face. He finally understood. This wasn't about money. It was about identity, heritage, belonging to something bigger than himself. For 42 years, he'd felt invisible, overlooked, weak. But now he realized he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. His parents had known. That's why they left him this place. They couldn't embrace their heritage themselves, but they gave him the chance to. He wasn't the forgotten son. He was the keeper of the legacy. Noah stood, decision made. These artifacts would never be sold. His phone buzzed with incoming texts as signal flickered in and out. Jess calling. He answered. Noah, are you okay? Austin told me about what you found. He said it could be worth millions. I'm fine. Listen. I've been thinking. Maybe I was too harsh. If you came back, if you sold those items, we could start over. Buy a bigger house. Travel. You could finally prove you're not Jess. Noah's voice was calm, steady, stronger than he'd ever heard it. I'm not selling them. What? Noah, don't be stupid. I'm not being stupid, I'm being clear. These artifacts are my responsibility. They represent my family, my ancestors. They're not for sale. Silence on the other end. So you're choosing some old junk over our marriage? I'm choosing who I am over who you want me to be. He hung up. For the first time in his life, Noah Benson felt strong. Austin arrived on Saturday, April 12th. He pulled up in a brand new Range Rover, sunglasses on, confidence radiating from every step. The expensive SUV looked absurd, parked next to Noah's decade-old sedan. Noah was on the porch, drinking coffee, watching the sunrise over the mountains. Brother, Austin's smile was wide and fake. Noah didn't stand. What do you want, Austin? Can't I visit my brother? Check on you after everything you've been through? Austin walked past Noah without waiting for permission, heading straight inside. Come on, show me what all the fuss is about. Noah followed, jaw tight. Austin found the hidden room immediately. Noah had left the panel open. He stood in the doorway, eyes gleaming, as he calculated values. Unbelievable. This is what Dad was hiding? Our supposed Lakota heritage? He laughed bitterly. He spent my whole childhood pretending we were just regular folks from Nebraska. Never said a word about any of this. And the whole time, Grandpa was sitting on a fortune. It's not a fortune, Austin. It's history. It's family. Austin picked up the eagle feather headdress, examining it like he was appraising a used car. History, that's worth millions. James said 2 to 4 million, minimum. Probably more, if you find the right collector. Put that down. Austin set it back carefully, smirking. Relax. I'm not going to damage your precious artifacts. He turned, stepping closer to Noah. But let's be realistic, brother. You can't keep this stuff in a falling-apart house in Montana. You don't have the resources to protect it properly. You don't even have insurance. What happens when word gets out and someone breaks in? What happens when the roof finally collapses? I'll figure it out. Or, Austin's voice took on the smooth tone he used when closing business deals. We make a trade. I get this property and everything in it. You get the Lincoln estate. The $1.2 million house that should have been yours anyway. Mom and Dad obviously made a mistake with the will. We both know that. The offer hung in the air. Everything Noah had wanted, everything Jess demanded. The life he'd lost. Respect, comfort, proof he wasn't a failure. You'd have the big house, Austin continued. Jess would take you back. You'd finally prove you're not the family disappointment. I'd handle preserving these artifacts properly, donate them to a museum, get the tax write-off, everyone wins. Noah looked at the artifacts. At Logan's journal, sitting on the table. At the eagle feather headdress, Austin had just handled like merchandise. He thought about his great-grandfather Wyatt, running from government agents to protect his son and their culture. Logan spending 50 years alone in this house, preserving their heritage while his own son rejected it. No, Noah said quietly. Austin's smile faded. What? I said no. These artifacts aren't for sale, and they're not for trade. They belong here. They belong to our people. Our people? Austin laughed sharply. Noah, we're like 1/8 native. We grew up in suburban Nebraska. We don't have people. We have a tax advantage and a multi-million-dollar collection. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I'm offering you a way out. A way to fix your life. But you're too stubborn and stupid to see it. I'm not being stubborn. I'm honoring our family, our real family. The one Dad tried to forget. Austin's expression hardened. All pretense of brotherhood vanished. You're making a huge mistake, Noah. I don't think I am. Austin moved toward the door, then stopped, pointing at Noah. You know what? I tried to help you. I offered you the easy solution, but you're too self-righteous to see sense. His voice dropped to something cold and sharp. You're going to regret this. You always regret your weakness. This time will be no different. He stormed out. The Range Rover's engine roared to life, spewing gravel as Austin tore down the driveway. Noah stood in the hidden room, hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. He didn't feel weak anymore. For the first time in his life, he'd stood up to Austin. And it felt right. 2 weeks later, late April brought warmer weather, but no peace. Noah was repairing the porch railing when he heard the car. He looked up, surprised. Jess stepped out wearing a soft blue dress he recognized, the one she'd worn on their 5th anniversary. Hair perfect, makeup subtle. The version of Jess he'd fallen in love with 15 years ago. Hi, she said softly, almost shy. Jess, what are you doing here? I wanted to see you. To see this place. She looked around at the repairs he'd made. The cleaned yard. The patched roof. You've been working hard. I'm trying. She walked closer, movements careful, non-threatening. Can we talk? They sat on the porch steps. Jess kept a small distance between them, but her body language was open, warm, calculated warmth, Noah realized. I've been thinking a lot, she began, her voice carrying practiced vulnerability. About us. About what I said before you left. She looked down at her hands. I was cruel. Noah, I was angry and scared, and I took it out on you. I'm sorry. Noah didn't respond, just watched her. I talked to my therapist, Jess continued. She helped me understand that I was projecting my own insecurities onto you. My fear of not being successful enough, not having enough security. She reached out and touched his hand. You didn't deserve the way I treated you. Jess, let me finish, please. She took a breath, and Noah could see her gathering herself for the main pitch. I miss you. I miss us. And I know you found something valuable here. Austin told me about the artifacts, about what they might be worth. There it was. I'm not asking you to sell them, Jess said quickly, squeezing his hand. I know they're important to you. But Noah, think about this practically. We could donate them to a reputable museum, somewhere like the Smithsonian or the Field Museum. They'd be preserved properly, and we'd get a significant tax write-off. We could use that money to start over somewhere new. Buy a house together. Maybe in Colorado or Montana if you love it out here. Really build the life we always talked about. She squeezed his hand again, eyes wide and earnest. Don't you want that? A fresh start? We could finally have the stability we always needed. Noah looked at her. Really looked at her. He saw the calculation behind her eyes. The way she'd rehearsed this speech, probably multiple times. The way she'd chosen her clothing, styled her hair, timed her arrival for maximum emotional impact. The strategic touch of his hand. The manufactured vulnerability. This wasn't love. It was manipulation. A business negotiation dressed up as reconciliation. Jess, he said gently, removing his hand from hers. Do you even know what tribe these artifacts are from? She blinked, thrown off script. What? The tribe, our heritage. Do you know anything about it? Lakota, I think. Does it really matter? It matters to me. It matters a lot. He stood, putting physical distance between them. Do you know why these artifacts exist? What they represent? Noah, I don't see what. They exist because my great-grandfather risked his life to save them. Because my grandfather spent 50 years alone protecting them. Because our government tried to erase an entire people's culture, and men like Wyatt and Logan Sullivan refused to let that happen. Jess stood too, frustration creeping into her expression. That's very noble, Noah. But it doesn't change the reality of our situation. There is no our situation, Jess. You kicked me out. You told me not to come back until I proved I was worth something. Noah's voice remained calm, but there was steel in it now. Well, I found what I'm worth, and it has nothing to do with money or status or what you think a man should be. Her expression shifted. The softness disappeared, replaced by the familiar disappointment. You're serious. You're actually choosing dusty old artifacts over our marriage. I'm choosing who I am over who you want me to be. There's a difference. Jess shook her head, anger flashing across her face. You're going to regret this, Noah. You'll be alone out here in the middle of nowhere with your precious heritage. And you'll realize you threw away everything real for a fantasy. Maybe, but it'll be my choice. She stared at him for a long moment, then walked to her car without another word. The door slammed. The engine started. Noah watched her drive away, dust rising behind her tires. He sat back down on the porch steps. No regret. No second thoughts. Just clarity. 3 days later, May 2nd, a black sedan with Illinois plates pulled up to the house. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, briefcase in hand. Mid-50 seconds, silver hair, practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Benson? I'm Richard Caldwell, Senior Acquisitions Director for the Heritage Museum of Chicago. Noah stood from the porch, immediately wary. I didn't contact any museum. No, but word travels in the archaeological community. Dr. James Morrison filed his discovery report with the university. And these things make their way through professional networks. Richard gestured to the house with false casualness. May I see what all the excitement is about? Against his better judgment, curiosity, maybe, or wanting to understand what he was up against, Noah let him in. Richard examined the artifacts with professional detachment, making notes on a tablet, taking measurements with a laser device, photographing items from multiple angles. His examination felt clinical, almost cold. Extraordinary, he murmured. Truly extraordinary. Mid to late 19th century, predominantly Lakota origin. Exceptional preservation condition. After 20 minutes, he turned to Noah with the expression of someone about to make a generous offer. Mr. Benson, I'm authorized to make you an offer. $3 million for the complete collection. We'll handle all transportation, authentication, documentation, and legal paperwork. Your name will be prominently listed as an honored donor in our newly planned Lakota Heritage Wing. You'll be invited to the dedication ceremony. There might even be opportunities for speaking engagements. $3 million, the number James had mentioned, the number that had haunted Noah for weeks. We'll treat these artifacts with the utmost respect, Richard continued, his pitch smooth and practiced. Climate-controlled display cases with UV protection, full security system, educational programming for thousands of school children every year. These items will be seen by hundreds of thousands of people annually. Scholars will study them. Your grandfather's legacy will inspire generations. It sounded good, professional, reasonable. But Noah thought about Logan's words. They must never belong to strangers. They'll be behind glass, Noah said. Well, yes, for preservation purposes, locked in cases, separated from their cultural context. Their spiritual meaning. Richard's professional smile tightened slightly. Mr. Benson, I assure you, we have extensive experience honoring indigenous cultures. We work with tribal consultants. By putting their sacred items on display, like museum specimens, it's not like that. We're preserving history. You're commodifying it. Noah's voice was calm but firm. These artifacts belong to the Lakota people, not to a museum in Chicago, not to collectors in New York or London, to the people whose ancestors created them, whose culture was nearly destroyed, who deserve to reconnect with what was almost stolen from them. Richard's professional smile disappeared entirely. Mr. Benson, let's be honest. You're what? 1/4 native? 1/8? You grew up in Nebraska with no connection to the culture whatsoever. Are you really the right person to make decisions about items of this historical significance? The words stung because they contained truth. Noah had grown up disconnected, ignorant of his heritage. But he thought about the past 3 weeks, reading Logan's journal every night, learning about Wyatt Sullivan's fight, understanding what it meant to carry this responsibility, even imperfectly. Maybe I'm not, Noah admitted. But I'm learning. and I know enough to say no to this. Richard closed his briefcase with a sharp click, smile gone completely. That's unfortunate. For you, and for the long-term preservation of these items. He pulled out a business card, set it on the table. When you change your mind, and you will, Mr. Benson, once reality sets in, call this number. The offer will likely still stand. He left, the sedan disappearing down the gravel road. Noah stood alone in the hidden room, surrounded by his ancestors' legacy. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown Montana number. Legal papers being filed Monday in Billings District Court. Austin Benson versus Noah Benson. See you there, brother. Noah's stomach dropped. The real fight was beginning. The official papers arrived via courier on May 6th. Noah read through the 12-page filing twice, hands shaking. Austin's lawyer argued that the will's language regarding all contents was ambiguous when applied to items of significant financial value that the deceased had no knowledge of. The filing claimed both brothers should have equal claim to valuable discoveries on any inherited property, and that the spirit of the parents' intent was equal distribution of wealth. It was legal garbage, but it was also expensive legal garbage that would require expensive defense. Noah called Dale, who referred him to a lawyer friend. Her name was Margaret Hayes, mid-42s, with the weathered toughness of someone who'd spent years fighting Montana legal battles. She read through the lawsuit in her small office above the town's only diner. "This is weak," she said finally, tossing the papers on her desk. "The will specifically states all contents belong to you, black and white. But Austin's lawyer, Douglas Finch, I know him, slick guy from Billings, is betting you don't have money for a real legal fight. He's trying to pressure you into settling, probably for half the collection's value. What happens if I don't settle? Trial. Billings District Court. Discovery process takes 2 to 3 months. Trial, probably in late summer or early fall. Legal fees will run between $30,000 and $50,000 depending on how dirty Austin wants to play." Noah's savings account had $8,400. Margaret saw his expression. "I'll work for partial payment now. Rest contingent on winning. If you're serious about keeping those artifacts, we fight. But you need to know Austin's going to play very dirty. He'll paint you as an incompetent hermit who can't properly care for valuable historical items. He'll bring up your job situation, your divorce, anything to make you look unstable and unfit. What's my defense? 3 prongs. First, the will's language is crystal clear. Second, these artifacts fall under federal NAGPRA protections, which means they're not personal property to be divided like furniture, they're cultural heritage. Third, you demonstrate genuine commitment to preservation, while Austin only sees dollar signs. Over the next 8 weeks, Noah threw himself into building that third defense. He contacted Lakota tribal councils across Montana. He reached out to cultural preservation organizations. He spent hours in the county library, researching NAGPRA laws and tribal sovereignty issues. He discovered something crucial. If these artifacts were tied to specific tribes and had cultural significance, they couldn't legally be sold to private collectors or museums without tribal approval. They might not even legally belong to him, they might belong to the tribe. Margaret's eyes lit up when Noah explained this. "That's it. That's our central defense. These artifacts aren't your property to sell or Austin's to claim, their cultural heritage held in trust." But Noah went further. In early June, he contacted Robert Whitehorse, a tribal elder and chairman of the Little Shell tribe of Chippewa Indians, one of Montana's recognized tribes with Lakota heritage connections. Robert drove 3 hours to see the collection. He stood in the hidden room for a long time, completely silent. His weathered hands hovered over items without touching them, as if feeling their energy. Finally, his voice rough with emotion. "Your great-grandfather protected these when the government was burning everything they could find. Your grandfather kept them safe for 50 years. And now you're willing to fight your own family to honor that legacy?" "Yes," Noah said simply. Robert nodded slowly. "Then you have our support. We'll testify on your behalf. We'll help you document these items properly. We'll bring in our historians and cultural experts. He paused, then smiled. And if you're willing, we'd like to partner with you on something bigger. What do you mean? I mean, turning this house into a cultural center. A place of learning and healing. A place where our people can reconnect with what was nearly stolen from us. Noah felt something click into place. A vision forming. This was the answer. Not hoarding the artifacts in a hidden room, not selling them to strangers, but creating something living. Something that honored both preservation and education. Yes, Noah said. Let's do that. Robert extended his hand. They shook, and Noah felt like he'd just made the most important decision of his life. The battle lines were drawn, but now Noah had allies. June through August became a storm of activity. Robert Whitehorse brought in tribal historians, elders, and cultural experts. They spent days cataloging every artifact, tracing its origins, documenting its cultural significance. The eagle feather headdress, used in traditional leadership ceremonies, approximately 160 years old, created in the 1,860 seconds before the major reservation conflicts. The ceremonial drum, created by Wyatt Sullivan himself in 1908, one of only 3 known examples from that specific tradition still in existence. The pottery collection, pre-reservation era, dating between 1,840 and 1,870, showing distinctive Northern Plains geometric patterns. Each item told a story. Each item represented survival against impossible odds. Noah stopped sleeping in his car. With help from tribal members and local contractors, many of whom worked for reduced rates, once they understood the project, he completely repaired the house. New roof, new windows, structural reinforcements, fresh paint. The house transformed from ruin to respectable. Margaret Hayes built their legal strategy around 3 arguments. First, the will explicitly gave Noah all contents of the property. No ambiguity existed. Second, these artifacts were protected cultural heritage under NAGPRA, not personal property subject to normal estate division. Third, Noah had demonstrated clear commitment to cultural preservation and education. While Austin viewed the items purely as financial assets, but Austin's lawyer, Douglas Finch, countered with character attacks. Noah was unemployed. He'd quit the bank in April to focus on this full-time, living off his savings. Noah's wife had left him. Noah had no formal education in archaeology, anthropology, or cultural preservation. Noah was displaying signs of instability, abandoning his career, becoming obsessed with a heritage he'd ignored for 42 years, isolating himself in rural Montana. The local newspaper, the Stillwater County Sentinel, ran articles. Brothers battle over $1 million Lakota artifacts. National Native American news outlets picked up the story. Reporters called constantly. Noah stopped answering unknown numbers. One evening in late August, Margaret visited with news. Trial date is set. September 24th. 4 weeks from now. Noah nodded, exhausted from months of preparation. There's something else, Margaret said carefully. Jess has been subpoenaed. She's testifying for Austin. What? His lawyer is calling her as a character witness. She'll testify about your mental state, your behavior, your inability to handle responsibility. Noah felt the betrayal all over again, sharp and fresh. But Robert Whitehorse, sitting with them, had a different perspective. Let her testify. Let Austin bring all his witnesses and expensive lawyers. We have something they don't. What's that? The truth. And an entire community ready to stand behind it. The tribal council organized a fundraiser at the reservation. Over 200 people attended. They raised $18,000 for Noah's legal fees. Elders offered to testify. Young tribal members created social media campaigns with the hashtag number #ProtectOurHeritage. The story went regional, then national. News outlets picked it up. Montana man fights brother to preserve Native American artifacts. Indigenous rights organizations issued statements of support. But criticism came too. Some argued artifacts belonged in major museums for maximum preservation. Others claim Noah was exploiting native culture for attention despite his minimal connection to it. The pressure was crushing. 3 nights before the trial, Noah sat alone in the hidden room, Logan's journal open to the final page. There will be people who don't understand. People who think you're wrong. Who question your right to make these decisions. But if you know in your heart you're honoring our ancestors, that's all that matters. The path of integrity is rarely the easy one. Noah closed the journal and carefully placed it in his bag. He'd be bringing it to court. He was ready. September 24th. Billings District Court. Judge Margaret Thornton presiding. The courtroom filled quickly. Tribal members wearing traditional ribbon shirts and beaded jewelry. Local supporters from Stillwater County. State media with cameras. Austin in a designer navy suit, confident smile in place, flanked by his legal team. Noah in a simple button-down shirt and clean jeans, Margaret Hayes beside him, and Robert Whitehorse sitting directly behind him in the first row of the gallery. Douglas Finch opened aggressively. Your Honor, this case centers on a fundamental question of fairness. 2 brothers inherited properties from their deceased parents. One property unexpectedly contained items worth millions. The will's language regarding contents cannot reasonably be interpreted to give one brother a $1 million windfall, while the other receives exactly what was known and intended. The spirit of Cooper and Clara Benson's estate plan was clearly equal treatment of their children. He painted Noah as unstable and unfit. Presented bank records showing Noah quit his steady job. Presented divorce paperwork showing marital breakdown. Called Jess as a witness. She took the stand, wearing conservative black, expression serious and concerned. Noah changed completely after going to Montana. She testified, voice carrying well-practiced worry. He became someone I didn't recognize. Obsessive. Isolated. He refused to listen to reason about practical matters. He chose those artifacts over our 15-year marriage, over any rational future. I tried to support him, but his behavior became increasingly concerning. Austin testified next. Playing the worried brother perfectly. I love Noah. I'm genuinely worried about him. He's not equipped to handle something this important. These artifacts need professional care, climate control, security systems, things Noah simply cannot provide. I have the resources, the professional connections, the stability to ensure proper preservation. I'm not trying to steal from my brother. I'm trying to protect our family's discovery and make sure Noah gets the help he needs. It sounded convincing, reasonable, like genuine concern. Then Margaret stood for the defense. She called James Morrison, who testified about the collection's extraordinary cultural significance and Noah's respectful approach to the artifacts. She called Robert Whitehorse, who explained NAGPRA laws in detail, describing how these artifacts were protected cultural heritage, not private property, to be divided like stocks or real estate. She called 3 tribal elders who testified about the ceremonial importance of specific items and why they could never ethically be sold or divided. But the turning point came when Margaret called Noah to the stand. He walked up, hands steady, touching the sweetgrass necklace Robert had given him 2 weeks earlier during a private ceremony. Douglas Finch cross-examined him ruthlessly. Mr. Benson, you had no connection to Lakota culture before finding these artifacts 6 months ago, correct? That's correct. You never participated in ceremonies, never spoke any native language, never publicly identified as Native American? No, I didn't. You quit your stable job, destroyed your marriage, and isolated yourself in rural Montana, all for artifacts you didn't know existed until April. Does that sound like rational behavior? It sounds like someone discovering who they are and choosing to honor that, or someone experiencing a mental health crisis. Margaret objected. Judge Thornton sustained it. Douglas tried a different angle. Mr. Benson, if these artifacts are so important to you, why not donate them to a major institution that can properly care for them? Isn't keeping them in a rural house somewhat selfish? Noah looked at Austin, then at Robert and the tribal members in the courtroom, then at Judge Thornton. These artifacts represent people who were nearly erased from history. My great-grandfather risked everything to protect them. My grandfather spent 50 years alone making sure they survived. They didn't do that so these items could sit in museum storage in Chicago or New York. His voice didn't waver. I'm not perfect. I didn't grow up knowing this heritage. I'm learning. Every single day, I'm learning. But I know these artifacts aren't mine to sell. They don't belong to Austin either. They belong to the Lakota people. My responsibility is to protect them until they can be properly honored by the community they came from. He looked directly at Austin. My brother sees $3 million. I see ancestors. I see Wyatt Sullivan hiding these items from government agents who wanted to destroy them. I see Logan Sullivan spending 50 years protecting what his father died for. That's the difference between us. The courtroom was completely silent. Judge Thornton made notes, expression unreadable. I'll have my decision within 1 week. Court adjourned. The gavel struck. Noah walked out, not knowing if he'd won or lost. But he'd told the truth. He'd stood firm. That had to count for something. Noah didn't sleep for the next 6 days. He worked on the house, repairing fence posts, clearing brush, anything to keep his hands busy and his mind from spiraling into worst-case scenarios. Margaret called on October 1st at 9:17 a.m. Judge Thornton has her ruling. Court reconvenes at 2 p.m. today. The longest 4 hours and 43 minutes of Noah's life. He drove to Billings with Robert Whitehorse, neither of them speaking much. What was there to say? Either the judge understood, or she didn't. The courtroom filled again. Austin looked confident, already mentally spending his victory. Noah felt numb, touching his sweetgrass necklace repeatedly. Judge Thornton entered at exactly 2 p.m., expression stern and unreadable. I've reviewed all testimony, evidence, and legal precedents carefully. This case raises important questions about inheritance law, cultural preservation, and family responsibility. She looked at both brothers. The will left by Cooper and Clara Benson is unambiguous. The phrase, all contents of said property, is legally clear. Noah Benson inherited the Montana property and everything within it. There is no reasonable legal interpretation that supports dividing subsequently discovered items. Austin's lawyer started to object. The judge raised her hand sharply. Furthermore, after reviewing NAGPRA statutes and consulting with federal Indian law specialists, these artifacts are classified as protected cultural heritage. They cannot be legally sold without tribal consultation and approval. This isn't ordinary personal property, subject to typical estate division. It's cultural patrimony with specific legal protections. She turned to Noah. Mr. Noah Benson, you've demonstrated genuine commitment to cultural preservation and education. You've invested your own limited resources. You've worked directly with tribal councils and cultural experts. You've shown appropriate respect for the significance of these items. Then to Austin. Mr. Austin Benson, your interest appears purely financial. You've made no effort to understand the cultural importance of these artifacts. You've shown no respect for your family's heritage or your grandfather's 50-year sacrifice to protect these items. Judge Thornton's voice hardened. This court finds in favor of Noah Benson. Full ownership and custody of the Montana property and all its contents remain his. Furthermore, given the cultural significance of these items, this court recommends formal partnership with appropriate tribal authorities for long-term stewardship. Case dismissed. The gavel struck with finality. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then the tribal members erupted in cheers and traditional calls. Robert embraced Noah. Margaret was grinning. Austin stood, face red with rage. He pointed at Noah across the courtroom. This isn't over. You'll regret this. But his voice was drowned out by celebration. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed with cameras and microphones. Noah gave one brief statement. These artifacts aren't treasure. They're history. They're memory. They belong to the Lakota people, and I'm honored to protect them and help create a space where they can be honored properly by the community they came from. That night, back at the house, Noah sat in the hidden room holding Logan's journal. He opened to the last page and picked up a pen. Beneath Logan's final words, he wrote, "The first, of October 2024. The court ruled in our favor today. I promise to honor your sacrifice and Wyatt's courage. I promise to build something that brings our people home. Noah Sullivan Benson. For the first time, he signed his full name, claiming both identities, both legacies. His grandfather's name and his father's name, together. 14 months later, December 2025, the house had transformed beyond recognition. New roof with proper insulation, restored porch with accessible ramp, fresh paint in traditional colors chosen by tribal elders. But the real change was the new addition, a 2,400 square foot community space built with a combination of grant money, tribal council funding, and donations from across the country. They called it the Sullivan Benson Cultural Heritage Center. The original hidden room remained climate-controlled and secured, but now connected to a proper museum-quality display area where tribal members could view the artifacts in rotating exhibits. The displays included extensive context about each item's significance, written in both English and Lakota. Noah lived in a small apartment above the community space. He'd used the last of his savings, along with a $75,000 cultural preservation grant from a national foundation, and fundraising support from 3 tribal councils. The center offered free programs, Lakota language classes led by fluent elders, traditional crafts workshops teaching beadwork, quillwork, and hide tanning, youth mentorship programs, elder storytelling sessions, ceremonial space for tribal gatherings, a research library with dozens of volumes on Plains Indian history. It wasn't a museum. It was a living place, a home for culture that had almost been destroyed. Opening day came on a cold, clear morning in mid-December. Over 300 people attended, tribal members from 4 different nations, local residents from Stillwater County and beyond, state officials, university representatives, James Morrison, the archaeologist who'd started it all. Robert Whitehorse led a traditional blessing ceremony. Sage smoke rose into the crystalline sky. Drums echoed across the valley, the sound carrying ancient rhythms into modern air. Noah stood before the crowd, microphone in hand. His hands shook, but his voice didn't. I grew up not knowing who I was. My parents wanted to protect my brother and me by hiding our heritage. They thought blending in was survival. And maybe it was. For their generation, they lived through times when being Native meant facing discrimination, violence, and systematic erasure. He looked at the tribal elders gathered near the front. But my great-grandfather Wyatt Sullivan and my grandfather Logan, they knew something my parents forgot or were too afraid to remember. You can't erase who you are. You can only choose whether to honor it or hide from it. And hiding comes with its own cost. He touched the sweetgrass necklace Robert had given him. I used to think I was weak because I didn't fight, didn't compete, didn't demand attention. But I've learned that real strength isn't about being loud or aggressive. It's about knowing what matters and refusing to compromise it. Even when everyone tells you you're wrong, even when the easier path is right there in front of you. A young girl, maybe 12 years old, wearing traditional jingle dress regalia, stepped forward. She held out a beaded necklace she'd made geometric patterns in blue, white, red, and yellow. "Thank you, Mr. Benson," she said clearly. "You made me proud to be Lakota." Noah's eyes filled with tears. He knelt down to her level as she placed the necklace around his neck. This moment right here, this was why he'd fought. After the ceremony, people toured the center for hours. Children carefully touched artifacts under supervised conditions, with gloves and guidance. Elders shared stories in Lakota, younger people translating. Families took photos, posting them proudly on social media. Noah stood back, watching it all unfold. Margaret Hayes approached, smiling. "How does it feel?" "Like I finally found where I belong." "Any regrets?" Noah thought about Austin, about Jess, about the Lincoln estate and the comfortable life he could have had. None. That evening, as the last visitors left and the winter sun set behind the mountains, Noah sat alone in the original hidden room. now preserved exactly as Logan had left it, down to the placement of every item. He opened Logan's journal and read the familiar words one more time. Outside, he could hear Robert and other elders preparing the evening fire for a small closing ceremony. Noah felt peace settle over him like a blanket. He'd done it. He'd honored the legacy. February 2026. 15 months after the trial, the Sullivan-Benson Cultural Heritage Center had exceeded every expectation. Over 6,000 visitors in the first 3 months. Partnerships with 5 universities for cultural research and education programs. A 6-month waiting list for language classes. Tribal youth summer programs drawing participants from across Montana, Wyoming, and South Dakota. But the most meaningful moment came on a cold afternoon in late February. Noah was outside, splitting firewood for the ceremonial fire pit, when a car pulled up, a modest sedan, several years old. He looked up. Austin stepped out. Noah froze, axe in hand. His brother looked different. Thinner. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by a simple jacket and jeans. The confidence had vanished. Entirely. Noah, Austin said quietly, "Can we talk?" They sat on the porch in silence for a long moment. Noah waited. "I came to apologize," Austin finally said, the words clearly difficult. "For everything. The lawsuit. The things I said. The way I treated you. Our entire lives." Noah remained silent. "I lost everything," Austin continued, voice rough. "The startup failed 6 months after the trial. Investors pulled out. I had to sell the Lincoln house just to cover the debts I'd accumulated. Turns out I was terrible at running a business. I just got lucky early and convinced myself I was brilliant." He laughed bitterly. "Jess contacted me once, looking for money. I told her I didn't have any. She hung up and never called back." He looked at the cultural center, at the people visible through the windows, at the traditional designs painted on the building's exterior. "I heard about this place. Read articles about what you built. Saw the photos, the programs, the kids learning our language." His voice cracked. "And I realized, you were never weak, Noah. I was. I just never saw it, because I was too busy competing, trying to prove I was better than everyone." Noah set down his coffee mug. "Why are you here, Austin?" "Because I want to know about our heritage. Our real heritage. The one Dad tried to hide. That I mocked." Austin's eyes were wet. "I want to understand what you're protecting, what Grandpa Logan and Great-Grandpa Wyatt fought for. I want to know who we actually are." For the first time in their entire lives, Noah saw his brother without the mask, without the performance. Just a man, broken, lost, searching for meaning after chasing the wrong things for 40 years. "Come on," Noah said, standing. "I'll show you." He led Austin into the center, through the main hall where evening classes were just ending, and into the preserved hidden room. He showed him the artifacts, read passages from Logan's journal aloud, told him about Wyatt Sullivan's fight to protect their culture during the darkest times, explained the center's mission and the tribal partnerships that made it possible. Austin listened, tears streaming down his face. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." Noah put a hand on his brother's shoulder. "You're here now. That's what matters." That evening, they sat by the ceremonial fire with Robert Whitehorse and other tribal elders. Austin asked questions, listened to stories, began the long process of understanding what he'd almost destroyed. It wasn't forgiveness yet, not complete healing, but it was a beginning. Later that night, Noah stood alone under the vast Montana sky. Touching both necklaces, he wore the sweetgrass from Robert and the beaded one from the young girl. He thought about his journey, from invisible banker to cultural keeper, from weak to strong, from lost to found. He pulled out his phone and took a photo of the night sky. stars brilliant and infinite above the mountains. He posted it to the center's social media page with a simple caption: "Strength isn't what you take, it's what you protect." Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. But Noah didn't care about the numbers. He cared that somewhere, someone might see it and understand. Your worth isn't measured by what others give you or what you can take from the world. It's measured by what you're willing to sacrifice to protect what matters. Noah went back inside, where the last embers of the ceremonial fire were fading. He was Noah Sullivan Benson, son of Cooper, grandson of Logan, great-grandson of Wyatt, keeper of memories, protector of heritage, builder of bridges between past and future. He hadn't inherited wealth, he'd inherited purpose, and it was worth more than any estate could ever be.